What's up, guys? Back at it again. It's Opex. I'm deciding to make a video today. I'm in a little bit of a busy area. Hopefully I don't get too much distractions. But I have a buddy of mine that's getting a tattoo right now. And I'm playing the waiting game for him to get out. So I decided to make a little bit of a video today. This is a topic I wanted to talk about a long time ago. I made a video debunking flat Earth. In this video, I want to debunk something else. I want to debunk these idiots. No offense. I apologize if you do take offense. I didn't mean to. But to the people that have been convinced there are ghosts, or that ghosts talk to them, or you heard a ghost. Like, I can make this video pretty long, but I think I can go really, really direct and make this a short video. So, ghosts. In my YouTube career, I believe it was my second video ever making on this channel, I believe. It had something to do with spirits and ghosts, and I explained what happened in my past with ghosts or spirits. And it's really weird because when you experience something and you can't explain it, it sounds kind of crazy to someone. So if you're experiencing a ghost, just understand your experience is real. That's a real experience. But what it is you are experiencing is a hallucination. It is not exactly what you perceive it to be. So a lot of people might say, my great-grandmother is still alive on this earth in a spirit form, or moving around in a spirit form, or a ghost form. And that person, let's say your grandma, you still smell your grandma, you still feel your grandma around. You believe that your grandma is talking to you. It could be anyone, right? It could be your grandfather. You might have lost a kid. You might not know what your ghost is, and you believe that your ghost is there. See, what you're experiencing is real. No one can take away your experience, but what it is can only be described objectively, not in a hallucination. Your experience is real. Your hallucination was real in terms of what you experienced. But do you really believe a ghost can talk? If it was possible for a ghost to talk to you, that ghost would need telepathy or something like that. Because there's no lungs, there's no voice box. So how can we make the sound where the only things in life that can produce sound and language is through a voice box, lungs, an organism? Right? And if a ghost doesn't have organs, no voice box, how do you hear those words? Well, it's a hallucination, because if you're hallucinating, which you're doing all the time, watch my videos, we are all hallucinating, where I describe in detail that we're always hallucinating, constantly. It's that we're in a constant form of hallucination to understand reality. The reason why we hallucinate is to understand that in which that the information's out there, but it's your brain's interpretation based on data. So if you've seen your grandma before and smelled your grandma before and heard your grandma before, it's very likely that your grandmother is your hallucination, because you've heard that before, you've seen that before, you've felt that before. But you can't do the same thing when you're describing a new ghost, right? So like someone you don't know. If that someone you don't know is trying to talk to you, right, or communicate with you, it would have to be through telepathy. It would not be through voice box. It would not be through your sensory organs. Those sensory organs cannot pick up something that is not there, right? It would be an hallucination. If I'm speaking to you right now, you're hearing that, right? You can decode that. That's how your brain interprets it. If you have a ghost, let's say, and you believe this ghost is talking, like I see it on shows all the time on television, I know people that believe in some crazy things, so I just felt like debunking a lot of stuff. I'll watch a poltergeist on TV, right? Like these poltergeist hunters and stuff. I don't watch TV, but I'll be over like my mom's house and her husband might watch it, right? And I'll just be like shaking my head the whole time hearing this stuff. Because here's one thing. They'll pick up on devices language. It sounds like it said help me on a device. You can't come up with help me without a few things, right? You need consciousness, you need an organism, you need to produce that sound. You can't do that without a voice box or lungs, right? I don't think I have to go in depth with that. I think you guys understand that. And I also believe that a lot of people believe some crazy shit. They'll believe a lot of things because that's what was decoded in their brain. Their hallucination was real. You really hallucinated that, just like if you were on mushrooms or acid. And you take that and you're hallucinating, well, that hallucination is a real experience. You're really experiencing that. But you need to distinguish whether that is accurate or objective. See, you can have a subjective experience, but the objective does not determine that. Now, you can look on devices and decode energy, right? You can find energy, right? But just because you found energy does not mean that's a spirit. There's a lot of forms of energy. And we also know that, energy doesn't just die, right? Like if I died, that energy has to go somewhere because that energy that I had was valid. That was something of substance in this 4-dimensional realm. So if I'm experiencing a hallucination and I think it's a ghost and I even picture in my mind that ghost, does it mean that that ghost is there? No, because when you use your sight or any other instrument, you can't distinguish a being like you picture it in your head. If it was a ghost in your head, you don't picture a spirit because there is no such thing. There's nothing, no data to go off of except for fiction, right? Like fiction novels or movies, right? But you can't distinguish what that is. So we hallucinate that as a person. And a person is something that we can see in our minds. Even if that person was like your grandma or whatever, we can picture your grandma in your mind. Therefore, you can start smelling your grandma. You can start hearing your grandma. Because you've already pictured this in your mind to be true. Therefore, a lot of things can happen because of that. Now, I'm not going to say that that energy or that feeling that you had was artificial. I believe it could be natural. It could be something that's there that your brain really notices and doesn't understand it. So it hallucinates something into the realm it understands. And it can decode and it can make sense of things. That's what your sensory organs do. And that's what your brain decodes off of those sensory organs. So when I'm saying we're all hallucinating, if you just closed your eyes right now and put a picture in your head, that picture you just put in your head is a hallucination. You just hallucinated a picture in your mind. We do that with everything to decode things. And just because you don't understand it, your brain's going to put it into a realm it can understand. So if, let's say, and it's based on belief, it's based on environment, it's based on genetics even, or past, I don't want to say past life experiences, but your genetic code and information that was passed on from generation to generation. And we distinguish and interpret things in a realm that we can understand. Even if it's false, your brain still does it to a point where you have to understand it. If you're a Christian or a Catholic, let's say you're Catholic, you're born Catholic, that's all you ever knew, and you believed in the Bible, you believed in praying to Mary, etc., right? Well, you're going to start seeing Mary everywhere because that's what your brain interprets, because that's what it believes to be true. Same similarities would happen when you, okay, let's just keep on the Christian thing. Let's say you go out into the world and you see somebody create a miracle. Well, you innately determine that that is a good or bad scenario, right? And then using that on previous data based on beliefs, you can determine, well, that was a good thing, therefore it was of God, right? So we hallucinate something into reality when we don't see God. Our sensory organs don't pick it up, but because of based on beliefs, we start hallucinate these things. Also, there's such thing as called an egregore, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've been saying it for years as an egregore. And an egregore is when you produce into reality. I'm gonna have to redo this video. Alright, what's up? So I'm back again. I don't remember exactly where I left off, but I gotta finish this video, right? I can't just go half-ass, do 15 minutes or whatever and just call it quits. So yeah, I want to continue talking about ghosts because it seems like a lot of people believe in these things, and they believe in them not because they've seen them with their eyes, generally. A lot of people believe that they have. I know people that, personally, that believe they've seen them with their eyes. But the thing is, you don't see them with your eyes, you perceive it with your brain. You make that picture in your head based on your brain and your interpretation of the information. You don't see a ghost because you can't, right? The only way you can is if you put a picture in your head of something that you already can be familiar with, which would be probably a human. So if you believe that your grandmother, it would be in human form. It wouldn't be in a spirit form because you can't interpret what that is in your brain. I've tried to see or believe that there's a ghost and what it would look like, but you can't fathom it. The same thing would go with, like, God. You can't fathom what God is. It can't just be a guy in a cloud with a long beard, gray beard, right? But that's what we picture because that's what we can imagine. We can't imagine a spirit. That's why we can only imagine it in a realm that we understand, this four-dimensional world, physical world. So we might picture a person, but clearly it can't be a person because you can't touch that person like you can a normal person. But it's your way of your brain interpreting things into a fashion it understands. Because if it doesn't understand it, it's going to be confused and fearful of that, and it must understand it. I'm somebody who personally tries to strive for understanding because I don't want to just believe I understand everything or already have things figured out. I need to understand because things change and my interpretation of things change based on data, belief, understanding, previous experiences, environment. And these factors can alter your consciousness. Not just drugs and alcohol, and you can change your consciousness and alter your consciousness in many ways. One of those being just when you sleep. You can take hold of your dream. And this goes along the facts of my last video, which was a few weeks ago, and I don't remember what I titled it, but just look at my last video, and I've been talking about hallucinations and what your brain picks up for a long time. There's nothing new about that, but in this video I just want to show how completely ridiculous ghosts are and the idea of ghosts. See, when I watch these TV shows that kind of cater to that entertainment of ghosts and stuff and poltergeists on TV, I tend to look at those unique traits that make people believe in it. That would be like if somebody had a device, and I think I was trying to say this earlier. You have a device and it picks up sound. Sound can only happen from, well, it can happen for a multitude of reasons, But sound can't happen from a spirit, right? Like, there's no physiological sense. There's only beliefs. If you believe somebody can talk without a voice box, without lungs, without being an organism, without being physical, then you might be wrong. Because even lightning, the sound of thunder, lightning is plasma. Plasma is a state of matter, and that makes a sound. Only matter can make sounds, right? There's nothing outside of matter that can make sounds, because even your air around you, the wind, that's matter. You can only make sounds with matter. Now a spirit, there's nothing that you can put into a vial and test at a lab, right? There's nothing there. There's no substance. But we can harness electricity because that's a substance. That's something that's real. Do you understand the difference? We can make microwaves. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. We have a lot of objective data. Now, what you may be experiencing, if you're trying to talk about ghosts or spirits or whatever, you may be experiencing something different, something more ideological, something more spiritual in your understanding. It's based on previous beliefs. It's not based on real information or objective data. It's based on what you understood of the past and how you can interpret what's going on now, what you see now, or what you understand or what you experience now can only be brought to you from the past. Because if you don't understand it, your brain will formulate a way of understanding it, even if it's false. It's just what your mind does. It's what your brain does. So we can talk about other things too. I mean, ghosts themselves, let me just finish with this. If you experience a ghost like I did, I experienced ghosts. That was a real experience. But I created the ghost. I created a power, a being that did not exist prior. I created this and I gave it power. You can watch my video of spirits or whatever I named it, ghost spirits or whatever, where I talk about a little bit of me to some extent believing what it was because I experienced it. Many years ago, 15 years ago or 13, 14 years ago, I experienced a ghost that was 100% real. Now, the reason it was real was not because I can see it, or I can feel it, or I can touch it, or taste it, or that I can formulate objective data out of it, or evidence. The reasoning is because I created that. I created that. It's called an egregore. Again, maybe I was trying to explain that before I paused the video, but an egregore is something that you formulate, you create with your own powers, your own being. You create things every day, not just physical things like structures or, you put together a computer. We create thoughts, and thoughts manifests itself into reality. Your interpretation of those thoughts changes who you are, what you believe, what you see, how you see it. Your mind is a very powerful thing, and it can create things that aren't there based on what you could somewhat entail a understanding of. Just because you felt something did not mean it was your grandma. It didn't mean that. It did not mean that. I have feelings all the time of people that are still alive. They could be 1,200 miles away from me. I still have feelings of them. I can still smell them. Doesn't mean that they're dead. And it doesn't mean they're a spirit or a copy of them in spiritual form. Right? That's just your brain of interpreting it into a realm it can perhaps grasp. Even if it's crazy. Even if it doesn't make logical sense or it doesn't coincide with physics. It doesn't matter. Your brain will interpret it in a way that it has to make sense of it. So we can go on with that all day long about ghosts, and you can't hear a ghost, you can't smell a ghost. There's no physical thing, right? Like, you can put perfume in the air, and the reason why you can smell it is because they had substance. That was a substance that touched on something else, and it was there. So that would be molecules on molecules or atoms on atoms, right? And you can smell that. Now, if that same perfume or whatever from your grandma wasn't there, then what are you smelling? You're making it up. Come on, guys. It's a hallucination. You made it up. I wish there was more people that watched my last video. I really, really like my last video. Ooh, look at this. It's hot outside, so these girls are wearing some skimpy things. Anyways, so let's go into something else. Let's go into like Bigfoot or something, right? Why do people believe in Bigfoot? Some people claim they have seen something. For example, let me give you an example of believing in something. Now, in my last video, and many times, I described the scenario where if a baseball shot across your head. If you've never seen a baseball before, your brain will interpret it as something it does understand, like a bird, right? It's not difficult to understand. We've all misinterpreted things before. So you understand that method of your brain trying to make sense of something it didn't understand or didn't get enough information on, right? So the brain will interpret it how it sees fit. And if you saw, like, for example, I went fishing the other day, maybe a few weeks ago, and I was at a canal, and at the canal there was bees and wasps, and this was right after I saw the murder hornets, in Washington state, which is kind of funny because they said basically that they found one in the state, and I'm in New York, so I'm on the other side of the country. I'm on the East Coast, so I see a murder hornet. Literally, one of those Asian murder hornets at the canal. I could have sworn it couldn't have been a queen wasp. It couldn't have been. It had to have been, because the colors on it was exactly like I've been watching murder hornets over the last few years, because I like to study things and want to understand species and why they do the things that they do. And, I always want to learn. And these murder hornets I had in my mind. And I've been seeing them everywhere. And it wasn't until yesterday that I'm 100% certain now that I've been hallucinating it. Because no matter how sure you are, or think you are, or that you know what you saw, it might not be. Unless you had real good glimpse of it, you took a picture of it, you measured it to a real murder hornet, and then went, wow, it really was. Look at the evidence. That's why philosophy will change the world. Because it's based on reason and evidence and not based on hallucinations. Right? I can say there's a murder hornet and have this experience. Doesn't mean it's real. And I want to drive that home. That it might not be what you thought it was. It was your interpretation of that because you might have seen it before. Remember, I was talking about dreams and I was been talking about hallucinations. This happens constantly in your life. Every second of the day, you're hallucinating, even if it's true, even if it's objective. See, anecdotal data is not evidence. It's merely an understanding of the evidence. It's an interpretation of the evidence. Your subject and your object are two different things, but the only way to determine the object is through the subject. And if that's the case, then you're hallucinating everything all day long, which is true. We're hallucinating reality. Each of our realities is different. I've been driving this home on my channel for a while now, and I will say it again. Each individual person, look at my eyes, each individual person has their own universe. Your universe is different than mine. Your interpretation of what's around you is different. So whether it's necessarily objective or not doesn't matter. It's the idea of the subject which changes reality. And if it's changing your reality, then it's a different universe. It's a different dimension. Inside consciousness itself is different. Through a squirrel's eye is going to be different than a human's eyes. Right? A squirrel can only see things at that lower frequency, at that lower vibration, at that lower consciousness. But a human can see things farther. And then a higher intellectual human can see things even farther. Like shamans or monks, and they can really, or even witchcraft, you have powers. You have this idea of changing your reality. Like, for example, if you're sad, you can change your reality through your mind. How you interpret things. Is the glass half empty or half full? You know, like my water right now. I don't have much water, but I'm looking at it like it's gold right now, right? So I'm happy that I have this water on a hot day. Now let's talk about Bigfoot, right? A lot of people claim they've seen Bigfoot, or heard Bigfoot. Like, there's no way that could have been a moose or a grizzly or whatever. It was Bigfoot. Off what? What are you basing that off of? First off, unless you captured a Bigfoot, how do you know what it sounds like? Oh, I heard it in the woods. So I have a family member, or at least someone who's married to this guy. And this guy believes that there's Bigfoot and aliens and all this types of shit. Now, you guys know about my interpretation of aliens. I definitely believe UFOs exist, but I don't see any evidence of actually intellectual alien life. I see evidence of non-intellectual life, and I see evidence of humans creating into existence new creatures. There was this new creature that was created a few months ago, patented and everything, where they basically made an organism from scratch and taught it how to walk and move through different sequences. Really weird stuff, right? So there could be life out there. If we can just create life that easily here, and there's so many stars, there could be life out there. Could there be intellectual life? Yeah, could be. But don't confuse could be with reality. Just because the dots line up does not mean it's real. Because if it was real, we'd all be experiencing this. But because it's only through one subject, there's not enough evidence on it to claim anything. That's why in my video about aliens, let's talk about aliens, or whatever I called it, because of a subscriber requesting that video. Give me your thoughts on aliens. So I did. I saw a UFO. Clear as day for many, many, many seconds. I didn't just see it in the corner of my eye. I had my eyes locked on it from here to this supermarket right there. Not even half of that. And I'm seeing it clear as day. 100% believe in UFOs. I've seen them over and over and over and over and over again. I've seen things that happen in the air that wouldn't make sense on a satellite, a jet, a helicopter wouldn't make sense. I've seen some crazy things. I've seen some really weird things. Now, of course, I believe in satellites because they launch tons of satellites in the skies every day. We can see them at night, etc., right? But we've never seen a satellite do some of these things that we've claimed to have seen from UFOs. UFOs, real phenomena. There's a lot of evidence towards it. Not everything you see is real, but there's a lot of evidence. Not just anecdotal, rather real evidence. I mean, there's anti-gravity technology out there. There's there's blueprints of the Nazis creating the bell. And the bell itself was supposedly seen. So there's a lot of evidence on that. Now, what's not evident is our little green aliens that are probing humans. There's no evidence of that. There's hallucinations of it, but there's no evidence. And I want to distinguish the two, because a lot of people might say the same thing about UFOs, saying that there's no evidence. UFOs, there are evidence. There's a lot of evidence for UFOs. Whether you want or believe them to exist or not is not up to me, and I don't care. That's why I never became that guy, UFOs are real, 100%. You know, like, and being one of those weirdos, right? I don't want to be one of those weirdos. If you don't want to believe in UFOs, I don't give a fuck, right? But for some reason, if you don't believe in aliens, people fucking go nuts. Oh, trust me, they're there. They're little green aliens. I've seen them. Or there's those tall whites and the short grays and the little green men. And you might have seen something. That experience is real. But to say it's something that you didn't experience is fucking ridiculous. Because first off, most alien believers have never seen an alien, right? And we can all agree on that. We all know that these people that believe in something they've never seen, it's kind of crazy, right? Doesn't mean that they don't exist. But to envelop your time into all of that, and your energy and your stress into something you've never seen, and all you can do is fear it because you don't understand it, so then you just keep looking for it and looking for it everywhere. And what do you find? The Bible says, you look and you will find. You seek and you will find. And that's universal. That's not just if you believe in God. Seek and you will find. That's everything. If you believe there's aliens, you're going to see aliens. You're going to hallucinate aliens. If you believe in the pray to Mary, you're going to start seeing Mary in your chicken noodle soup. God, these people suck at driving. We're definitely going to witness an accident here. Anyways, Bigfoot. You heard Bigfoot, huh? In the woods back there, huh? Scared you, huh? Couldn't have been a moose. Couldn't have been. No way. I hear moose all the time. It didn't sound like that. You hear plenty of shit out in the wilderness you can't explain. Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean you know what it is. A lot of people say, well, that's an act of God. But you don't know what God is. You can't even picture it in your head, what God is. Even the Bible says your brain can't wrap your head around what God is. Duh. Because you can't. You can't wrap your head around God. You can only understand it in the realms you can understand it. In the dimensions that your brain is limited to. Or your limitations you've put on your brain. Or your understanding. Now, before this video gets way too long, I'm going to start thinking about other conspiracies and just finish it off. There's no Bigfoot, guys. And if there was, which I'm not saying there isn't a possibility, but you can't seek a holy grail that never existed, right? So there is this quote from George Soros having a quote-unquote interview in like 2014 with Guild, which is an organization. Now, I see this meme of Guild and George Soros saying that, well, we pay these, we keep the black community dumb and docile, and they do whatever we want. They control everything, right? But there's a quote, and you can look it up. You've probably seen the memes online of it, but it doesn't exist. That interview never happened. But people believe it did because they saw a meme online. But that's how the brain operates. Just because you thought it to be true, it becomes true in your reality, in how you see things. But it is not true. It's not objectively, it never existed, right? That interview never took place. And there's tons of evidence of stuff like that. Like, you believing in something, and therefore it's a part of your life all of a sudden, and you're seeing it in everything. Well, because if you change the way you see things, the things you see change. You create your reality. You create your visions, your hallucinations, your understandings. And once you understand that in witchcraft and like that New Age movement, they understand that power. Witchcraft, they've been well known to understand the powers of voodoo. You have a lot of powers in you, but it's in your universe. And the only way to stop your universe, or that energy or that information in your universe, is an alternative universe conflicting with that belief. This would be your intention versus their intention, your understanding versus their understanding. And just because one is right and one is wrong doesn't mean you guys will come to an understanding of that. Right? So it doesn't matter. It only matters what you believe to be true in your environment, in your experiences. But if you change that, you will start seeing something different. I encourage you guys, take up reason and evidence. That changes the world. See, philosophy is based on thought, thinking critically. It's a lost habit, I'll say, in our generation, in our new world order. It's very rare you find people thinking critically, because there's Google, there's another form of evidence out there that trumps the human mind. And it's sick. See, your mind is very powerful, and it creates things in a realm for it to understand and to interpret. And you can rewire your brain however you want. During my biggest conscious awakening, I was my biggest one, my biggest, not my first one, not my second one, but my biggest one. I learned a lot of stuff, and I started creating things into reality, and I started using my superpowers because I understood how easy it was. I started creating those egregores, your gods, your Bigfoots, your aliens, the things that you've never seen before with your eyes, but rather you've hallucinated through interpretation of what you believe. Mary. First off, there's no evidence Mary ever existed, right? There's no real evidence. There's no fossil record. But in your mind, you believe you know what Jesus looks like in Mary, and that Jesus came down, and you have a relationship with Jesus. Don't get me wrong. You do have a relationship with Jesus. Don't get me wrong. But you created that. That's not something objective. That is a relationship with the subject. And that's a relationship based on your understandings. See, just because one person has a relationship with Jesus doesn't mean the other person doesn't have a relationship with Allah. And it feels the same, and it feels similar, right? So you're creating that relationship. I can create a relationship with my dead grandfather, right? I can create that in my mind right now. If I believe it, and I say to myself that Grandpa's out there, and he's going to hear my words without ears somehow, and he's going to interpret those words through his brain somehow that he doesn't have because he's dead. If I believe that well enough, I'm actually communicating with that person. If I switch my logic to understanding that I'd rather be happy today, I'm going to start smiling more. It's just something that happens. You have this power in you at all times of manipulating reality and creating things into existence that aren't there. You know kids that have imaginary friends. Well, probably not much anymore because they have new imaginary friends called video games and movie characters and cartoons. But once upon a time, we would go outside and be out there all day without screens, and we would have to formulate our friends, imaginary friends. And they really had imaginary friends. There was a teacup, they believed it to be there and everything, right? Think about it. You do that with Bigfoot. You created that. You wanted it so bad, or you believed it so much because of whatever reason. And therefore, you created an egregore into reality. You created something that didn't exist into reality. That's the powers you have. You create aliens. You create whatever belief you have. You can create idols. You can create anything. Now, this is the witchcraft, the New Age movement, and stuff like that. How I look at it is, this is a power that anyone can use. You can label it whatever you want. It's just intention. It's just your understanding. It's your universe. It's separate than mine. And if you believe in something, it exists because you created that. Now, does it exist objectively? Is it something that we can use instruments and determine that it exists? Yes, actually. You literally create things into existence. If you consider the power of prayer, you can use instruments to determine that energy, to determine how much. It's one of those things that you can determine, you can find, you can use instruments to determine. And I think that's really important, because if you can find out power through prayer, through instruments, that means you and you and you come together in the same intention of prayer. Why is it that that becomes truth? Because not only do you believe it now, you've rubbed that belief on others. And now others believe it too. That belief becomes more powerful now. Just because everyone believes it doesn't mean it's true. But because everyone believes it, to the individual, it is true, whether it is or not. So if you have a lot of people believing something, it's essentially truth. If everyone believes that 9/11 was terrorism, on the history books, in all history, everyone's going to believe that that's what happened, even if it wasn't what was true. So I just want to put some interpretations out there of what reality is and how it is manipulated through the subject, and how you can create things into existence that is real. You really created this thing into existence. Yes, it might just be in your mind, but you're creating an energy and a frequency and an aura out there that is manipulating and changing the frequency. To some level, we all have ways of putting pictures in each other's brains. It's like a form of telepathy. Now, we can't see that picture, but we can instill that picture. We might not be able to see that picture in terms of like what it looks like to them, but we instill that picture. When we use language, that interpretation of that language is decoded and used. That language puts pictures and hallucinations in the mind. If I say I love you, depending on your interpretation of that is how you're going to take it. It's all about interpretation of the subject and your beliefs. So if we're going to talk about ghosts and you're interpreting something that you've created, well, you can interpret it however you want. You created it, right? You created it. You can manipulate it however you want. It's just like a dream. So this is the power that you guys have. Understand the difference, and I encourage you guys, take up philosophy, reason and evidence based. And then based on reason and evidence, you apply your logic, your critical thought in your brain to determine what is real and fake. What is more objective than the subjective? What is more empirical than the anecdotal? However, like I said, it might not be pure evidence where it's used in raw form of evidence form, but it is a form of evidence. It's just not a precise form of evidence. Anecdotal experience, that is a form of evidence that is minute. That is not evidence based on fact. It's based on interpretation. So understand that. Facts is empirical. Interpretation is anecdotal, an experience. So understand that you can manipulate your brain however you see fit. Manipulate it in a way that it's reason and evidence based, and using your brain to formulate logic on that reason and evidence Therefore, you can understand things more deeper and understand things, and you can even formulate new powers and higher levels of consciousness. And you can start understanding people more empathetic towards people, because you start understanding them more. Philosophy will change the world. But if people start or continue believing their hallucinations is empirical fact, then we can't get anywhere in life. If you look at an interpretation of a television screen of there's a poltergeist and we use this instrument and we picked up sound waves of help me, it doesn't make sense. Because if you're reason and evidence based, you know what sound comes from, language comes from, and you need a brain. You need a brain. You need vocal cords. You need a tongue, right? Like, if you didn't have a tongue, you sound different. It wouldn't sound like help me. Watch, I'll try not moving my tongue. Right? So how am I gonna get help? Help me. It's bullshit. Understand it's bullshit. Start seeing things. Understand, like Tupac said, realize. That's enough for this video. Understand that me debunking things is always going to be through philosophy. I'm not going to be putting things on my screen in a palette form of, a PowerPoint or something. I'm not doing that, because that's manipulating. I use reason and evidence, philosophy, because philosophy itself is the tool needed to change the world, to give you the powers that they stole from you. So that's enough for this video. I hope you guys get something out of this. It's about 50 minutes into it with the two videos combined, so I don't want to go any farther. Thanks for watching. If you guys get something out of this, please like, share, subscribe, comment. You guys probably have never shared my content because I'm not entertaining based, but just share, like, let me comment below. Let me know what you guys think about the subject, and keep making those gains. See you guys.